Whoa, I found something. It's me. I mean, I've tacked on a little bit of mass since then, but you know, that's me 7 years ago at New York Comic-Con. Who am I talking to? Well, that's Gabe. And at the time, I didn't know that Gabe was the co-creator of Marvel Contest of Champions. And he didn't know I was a YouTuber because back then, I didn't use a face cam. I did ask if I could record an interview, to which he graciously said yes, even though I didn't really know what questions to ask back then. Yeah, I was just excited to be talking to a game developer because as 2016 me will tell you,
I've been slowly kind of easing myself into trying to make my own game.
I wanted to make games. I still do, more than anything. We even ended up drawing Deadpool side by side at the Comic-Con after party, and Gabe, he's a little bit of a better artist than I am, but it doesn't matter, I had a blast. Gabe's official title for Marvel Contest of Champions is the Art and Creative Director. Or at least it was. Today I got a chance to sit down with Gabe and figure out why he recently left Kabam. Is that ultimately what led you to walk away from Kabam?
I think it was a little bit of a lot of things.
And I may just have a few surprises for Gabe as I do my best impression of Nardwar or Sean Evans to dig up parts of Gabe's past that date all the way back to the 90s. Does this look familiar to you at all?
Oh man, how did you get that?
So sit back, relax, maybe grind a little bit of arena as you listen to this conversation between myself and one of the most important and creative minds behind the game that brought us all together. Gabe, we first met back in 2016 at New York Comic-Con, and at this point, you know, Marvel Contest of Champions was already a pretty big hit. Can you take me back to some of your earliest sort of, you know, moments of, you know, being part of the team that created this game, followed by seeing how successful it was, you know, once you actually released it into the wild?
Yeah, it was an interesting time. You know, we started the studio that got bought by Kabam, Exploding Barrel, like in 2010. Started just like 5 or 6 of us. When we were about 20-something people, Kabam bought us. I think they liked the way we did things. We had nothing yet that like had been proven as games. You know, we did a couple of small things. We did Margaritaville Online, and we did like
Blastron, Top
Blastron,
Bar.
yeah, Top Bar, and all of that. So Kabam was already a big company in the US, in San Francisco, and they had like many connections. Their idea was, you know, license games that can make billions of dollars. And we got thrown into that in a time where mobile games were starting to pick up from like really casual 2D games into more like console style 3D AAA games. And because our team, we all came from EA and we had the experience in console, I think Kabam looked at us and like, your studio is going to be the AAA studio. And they started making deals. They had contacts in the industry in the US, and they wanted us to do things. And of course, when Marvel landed, they started asking us like, hey, we think we're going to have a deal with Marvel. And of course, we're all excited. We're all big Marvel fans, but we had no ideas what we were getting into. But it was funny because it was a very fertile time. The MCU was brand new. It had a few really great movies already, like and the Avengers kind of blew everything open. You know, people were really interested in everything Marvel, so we got really lucky with the timing too. There was not a lot of other Marvel games. There was maybe a couple, and there was Marvel Puzzle Quest, and ours was the first game that realized that Marvel dream, I think, in a very big way. I remember when we went to Comic-Con, the first Comic-Con in 2014, we had this tiny little, it was a pillar you know, with 4 screens for people to play. And then people walked by and they said, what is this? Like that PlayStation game? Because it looked different from, I guess, anything in mobile that they had seen at that time. It was interesting to see the reaction of people. And as soon as we turn on the game, the very first day you start seeing the numbers coming, we saw it was going to be good. We just sat in, everybody in the studio watching the numbers coming, people downloading, people starting to spend money and stuff. So we knew it was going to be big. We had no idea how big it was going to become. That came later.
Well, speaking of Comic-Con, you guys gave out some really cool things over the years, and I have some of it on my desk here. And, you know, I was always a bit surprised that after seeing something as cool as like these crystals right here, I was always a bit surprised that you guys didn't end up taking this game just a tad bit more into the physical realm. Because in addition to those crystals, there was even some other larger things. Like this is probably the granddaddy crystal of them all, which these things weren't that available. I think it was only like one person a day would win something like this. And this one was actually won by my buddy Enzo, an Alliance main, just overall great dude. This thing actually plugs in and lights up, which is super cool. But, you know, in particular, these crystals right here, I feel like could be sold, especially like the different varieties of every time you guys, you know, designed a new crystal in game. If you guys sold like a pack that would contain these crystals and have a redemption code to then spin out a digital version of the physical crystal that you're now holding, I feel like those would sell incredibly well. Did you ever have any sorts of plans to do something like that?
There was always ideas like that. We always had ideas, but there are limitations to what we can do as a game maker for Marvel, right? When you sign a contract, you are allowed to make games and mobile games.
Right.
So I guess, you know, as much as we wanted to do other things, we could partner with other people to do it, but it would be a Marvel thing, right? It's just like, we wouldn't make any money out of it or anything like that. It would be something just, we'll make it for fun. It was always good to make those things and give it to people, but that's a different deal. You can just, you know, give us prizes and stuff, like the little coins, the little collector coins and stuff.
Those coins are great.
Yeah, we love to do those things, but we cannot sell them, or not even t-shirts and stuff like that. So it was part of what the limitations were. And we always wanted to like maybe investigate doing like a TV show or something like that, but you know, we probably have to renegotiate our contract at the time to expand our multimedia into something else.
Yeah, you know, I've always wondered about that. Not about like an MCOC TV show, but just I know that you've done some cinematic work with Rainmaker Studios, and you know, with all of your Marvel connections, working on these games, and then even getting to connect with some of the big name actors in the motion comics. I was kind of curious if you ever wanted to sort of tie all of those things together and, you know, work on a TV show or a movie if that was something that interested you. And then I guess even predating that digital work, you've even made like some comics and, you know, graphic novels and things. And I'm sort of curious on that end. Do you find it drastically different to tell a story by, you know, putting a book in someone's hand versus a controller?
That's what I love, right? Storytelling is my jam. I've never been married to a single medium. I started doing comic books because comic books is always easier to make yourself, right? You can write, you can draw, you don't depend on like, it doesn't cost any money to make. That's where I cut my teeth. Comic books, it's a very good way to learn storytelling. And then when I started trying to make this into my career, I was still in Brazil, and the first thing I looked at was animation. It seemed like a natural progression, right? I love drawing, I love, you know, doing those things. So I decided to do animation, but I started jumping into different things. I started to realize that I'm a better designer than I am an animator. So I started doing concept art, and concept art becomes like this thing. You can do concept art for movies, you can do for games, you can do for animation. So I started like, you know, trying to spread my wings, and I did some stuff for movies that never came out, but that was interesting. Animation is another world, and I have lots of friends in animation, and I love animation. But games, it's kind of like the new frontier, you know. My daughter's generation, that's their storytelling medium. I don't see anybody from her age, she's 12 now, like sitting in the movie theater that often. They like to play and create and be part of it. Games are always more interesting that way for me. And mobile games, you know, a lot of people look at mobile games like, oh yeah, it's mobile games and stuff. But mobile games have a lot of advantages in the area. It's much agile to develop, and you can have this ongoing conversation with the players. Contest taught me that. No, every month you have to put on a show to keep people coming back. It's almost like a circus. You have to like be always like a show person to keep people interested, or they'll just move on. Yeah. But because contest is so huge, it gave me the opportunity to play in other areas too. The trailers, you know, with big budgets every end of the year. The motion comics to tell stories that we couldn't inside the game. You know, I got to collaborate with Marvel with the comic books, even toys, try to design toys and stuff. So I got to like get my feet wet on every single medium that you can think of. And it's all storytelling. in the end of the day. Even like designing the booths for Comic-Con contests and Realm, like to design that experience as a storytelling thing, it was how we can make people get in and get into the room with the throne and feel awe. And so, I really like, if tomorrow I don't work in games anymore, there's other areas that I would love to play to for a story.
Well, you mentioned Brazil, and Gabe, I'm curious, what can you tell me about these two words?
Wazgga, Blazka. Yeah, that was,
Yeah.
you did the homework. That was my first fanzine back in Brazil with my friends. It was me, Jean, and Feijão. We're all like comic nerds, early 90s, love comics. The image comics revolution was starting to come. So very interested in that thing, like we used to buy imported comics because, when Spawn came out and Wildcats and all the new comics from the 90s, we didn't have those in Brazil yet. So we had to like import and wait for like 3 months for them to get to the comic shop, and then we'll sit together and just like go page by page and go, oh my God, and like we should do something like this. And then we decided to do it. I was starting university. I started when I was 17, I guess. It was half like music fanzine, half comics. So we had people writing, reviews of shows and stuff like that. We interviewed a few people, and we also had like a few comics. And it's funny because looking back, the other day I was looking at some of the old ones, and it felt like some of the stories are very derivative. We wanted to be like, I don't know, Mike Mignola or Frank Miller or whatever. We were trying. But it was also a lot of fun because we could just do the stories, Xerox them, go somewhere, some event in the university, some show or stuff, and just give it to people and see their reactions right there. It was so energizing, you know what I mean? Like to see the whole process and have the control of all the whole thing. We did maybe like 4 or 5, and then we stopped because it's also a lot of work. I have a couple of friends. My friend Feijão Luciano is I met him now. I went to Brazil and started reminiscing about the stories and how like he would take forever to finish his story, and we all, like me and my other friends, would be like all finished and waiting for his story. But he's like so detailed on everything, and it's like waiting for a month for this guy to finish this one last page. And one day we called him to my place and say, hey, let's do something. And then when he arrived, we locked him in my bedroom and said, you're only gonna live here when you finish the last page. So we sat downstairs and he was upstairs just like finishing that. It was like a couple of panels. So we always remember that story, how the camaraderie. It felt like very punk rock, I mean, like do it yourself things. And I always miss that when you start growing with a company and you lose that. And in a way, that's why I wanted to come back to the roots with my new studio to retrieve that feeling once again, because it is really energizing as a creator.
Interesting. Okay. I want to circle back to that in just a moment, but I am curious because the two are so wildly different from one another. If you were able to sort of carry over any lessons learned from passing out a free fanzine in Brazil to then working on a billion-dollar Marvel mobile game in Vancouver.
There's been a lot of lessons, it feels like a lifetime ago. But one thing that I learned later on at Kabam is that I never quite changed my way of doing things. Sometimes as you grow into your role and you become director or whatever, you start leaving some things behind and you start becoming another kind of professional. And I'm very stubborn. That's one thing that people around me know. I like to do things my way, and when things are not done my way, I'll do it myself. And also I trust a very small group of people that are very talented to like just close my eyes and just and they're a very small group, and the bad side of it is that I'm a bit centralizing on my decisions. But the good part is that if there's a problem to be solved, I don't wait or like don't ask for budgets, or I don't like, oh, I need 10 people to do this. I always try to do it myself first, and I'm very like unaware of my own limitations. I know I have many, but I just like, I think I can do this. And I'll go there and try to learn it. That's the indie spirit, right? That's this thing that never left me. And not even like Kabam. People just go, you just have to delegate. It's like, but this is important. Like, nobody's gonna do this quite this way. You know what I mean? I can do it faster. It's not because I don't think other people are as talented or anything like that. It's just because I have a very specific way and very specific vision for things. And in a way that pushed me into become creative director because I could see the big picture and I cared enough. I gave enough of a shit to try to make every single piece of it the best it could be. And I think contest benefited from that, from having like a strong vision for good and bad. That is around a singular person or maybe a small group of people, you know what I mean? Or our team was very small and we had like a cabal, like me, we had Adam, we had Gene. It's like we all very good at what we do and complementary, but we didn't let a lot of people come in. We'll take care of this, you know, because you're going to screw it up. In a way, contest benefited from that kind of indie spirit that we never kind of let go from.
Well, so did that change then? Because like you mentioned, you started out with a very small group at Exploding Barrel Games, and then you guys were acquired by Kabam, and then fast forward a few more years and Kabam is acquired by Netmarble. And I'm curious, what is sort of gained and lost along the way with these two relatively big studio changes in such a short period of time like that?
The most obvious thing is that we got a lot of extra resources, right? Suddenly, money is not object anymore. If we needed something, we could just hire someone to do it or outsource it or whatever. I think in our area, the art and creative area, we were the ones that felt the least because since the beginning, we had a very strong group of veterans that will take care of everything, all the characters, and some of the designers very creative too. So we all like took care of everything. And for the longest time, we didn't even hire anybody else. We had already the amount of people that we needed, and we all set together. But then as the game grows, you know, the design area is the one that needs to get the most people usually to get new modes, you know, new events, new stuff like that. And they also like live ops to take care of like daily, you know, a mobile game like Contest as a service is less of a product, right? So you need people in live ops to make sure that everything's running smoothly. You also need a lot of people to test the game. You need a lot of community people, you know, to deal with the players and help them and stuff like that. So those areas, from my point of view, grew much faster than our area. We always were the stable ship. Did the characters, did the stories, did the environments, and it was always very stable, you know, like, so people kind of left us alone because we never got any, you know, the designers get a lot of shit for, you know, if something breaks, but the characters, the visuals were always like top notch and people never said bad things about it, very rarely. So we got left alone for years, right? And then, you know, when we started spinning into other projects, then we had to hire other people to get to the other projects. But our team stayed pretty much the same. You know, hired maybe a few people, and that was it. But in my side, because I sat in the bridge between the art team, the design team, and the marketing team, those are the three teams that I really wanted to be close to. I always felt there is opportunities that were open to us because of the more money, you know what I mean? Like, oh, we can hire John Mulaney to do, you know, Spider-Ham. We can just hire him. Or we can do, what's his name from the Eternals to do their voices. Or Taika Waititi. I got to direct Taika Waititi, you know, write a stupid script for Korg. And then we got to call Taika. He was filming Jojo Rabbit in Prague. So I had to wake up at 6 a.m. And then you go be in the booth in Europe with my script. And then you go how do you want to do this? And I was like, oh my God, no, man. It's it's your character. Just go for it. You know, how can I, you know, direct you? So that kind of thing I would never dream in my life, you know, but to see him say, oh, this is really funny. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. So that kind of thing is priceless. Or maybe present MROC at the Madison Square Garden. You know what I mean?
That's crazy.
How can a kid from Brazil just sit at that, you know, oh mom, I'm gonna present at the Madison Square. I'm gonna play the Madison Square Garden. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
that kind of thing is, yeah, a big company will allow you to do that. And for me, I was very lucky to be kind of like the face of the game. Very early, I really wanted to be in contact with the players and be the person showing things. I always said, if it wasn't me, you'd be somebody that doesn't deserve it. Because a lot of people do that. You know what I mean? Like, a lot of companies put somebody that is not in the trenches to be the face of the game. And I was like, that's very weird. You should put somebody that is actually a designer, you know, like, or artist, or somebody that really is there.
Yeah.
But sometimes they have, you know, people that are like important and they have to be there on the stage. And thankfully, Kabam never thought that way. Kabam said, like, you know, you should go. You know about it. You know about the story. You know about the things you can speak. You know. So I was very lucky to have all of that at the same time because the money, you know,
Right.
allows for that. And the amount of money the contest did was, it still does, is incredible. Like, it's kind of like a unicorn.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been unique for the last 10 years or whatever that we've been there.
I've always really appreciated that about you or any of the other devs that are willing to talk to me or any players, because when you're a fan of something, in this case being fans of a game, we want to hear from the unique perspective or perspectives of the people that are making it, and through some of the conversations that we've had over the years, it's given me a bit of a unique perspective where the best way I can sort of put into words is like having courtside seats to a basketball game. And I've never actually had courtside seats to a game before, but what I imagine is like, okay, you're just part of the crowd like everyone else, right? But also in being so close to the action, maybe just having a slightly higher appreciation for everything that's going on, being that close to it all. And then every once in a while, I found myself a little too close to the action, like the time that, I found myself on stage at Comic-Con commentating a fight, just trying desperately not to shit my pants in front of the 50,000 people in the Javits Center. But what I mean is like, okay, so when you guys announced Aegon, on the one hand, as a player, I can sit there and I can watch that announcement and think like, oh, this is really cool, You guys are adding the first ever champion of the contest. Like, I didn't even know that there were champions of the contest of champions. Like, of course we're playing with champions, but this is someone that won the contest, the first ever contest, and now we're gonna get to play as this character, so it's really cool. And then on the other hand, through talking over the years, just getting a little bit of insight into some of like your dreams and aspirations. And I know that this is a big deal, getting to create a Marvel character from scratch and add them to the Marvel universe. And I know, you've made a few characters at this point, but this is one that's like so unique to this world that you've been sculpting all these years. And I just know how meaningful that is. It's a big moment. It's been interesting,
For me, it's kind of like, because Marvel has been such, in Brazil, the comics came from somewhere, in New York, right? And you read the comics, but you don't know who those people are. You hear about Jack Kirby or Stan Lee or Frank Miller, John Byrne, but even in Brazil, they have a lot of access to like those people voices. You know what I mean? Like didn't see any interviews. I don't know what they're about, what they look like. So they felt like almost mythical to me. And Marvel is like, oh, the house of ideas. But then when you invited to play in their playground, and you're sitting there with the same people. Oh, the editors are there, the creators are there. Every year Comic-Con, I would go to. I was sneaking the Marvel party. They have like a legendary Marvel party every year at a bar after Comic-Con, like at the Saturday, I think. And we've been kind of invited, like, but not really, because it's just the publishing people and the creators, and they're all sitting there and they're all talking about the future stories they're gonna do and making deals, you know what I mean? Like, and drinking, and it's all like open bar. So every year we just go walk uptown and just like find a like pub. It felt like being part of this really small family. And also the Marvel Games people, like if you look at the size of the Marvel Games team, it's just like, I don't know, 20 people. It's just like, it's really small. And they publish all of that. And they make sure that everything is great. All the console stuff, the mobile stuff, arcade, VR, and all of that. And it's just like really cool people that I'm still friends with. It feels like you're invited to like a very special club, and that's amazing.
So when meeting these people in the Marvel industry, you know, whether it's the comic book writers or artists or the, you know, the actors playing the characters on the big screen, who are you, you know, most excited to meet and talk to and, you know, sort of pick their brain a little bit?
Well, the creators are always the best, right? It's you know, like Al Ewing, for example, the guy who wrote Contest comic and also like probably the best Marvel writer the last 10 years. We struck this kind of, you know, on and off relationship just by the fact that we're both working on contests. That was the first thing when I went to Chicago to do a talk about contests. It was the first one I did. It was 2014, and small room, just talking about what contest is going to be, blah, blah, blah. And there was a few people. And right there, I saw, I think it was Dan Slott that sat there, the writer for Spider-Man. He sat there and he started looking and shaking his head. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to be interesting. And then I convinced Kabam to go so I could go there, so I could just talk personally with Al too, because I knew the contest comic was going to be made, and I wanted to be part of this connection, right? And I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna help write this on the contest side. You're gonna write on the comic side. Let's try and connect the stories somehow. Like I know we're gonna take different directions, but like let's try to have some elements in common. And he's such a like kind, like generous guy, and it's like he's not like ego at all. He's like, oh, you can't do this, I'm gonna do this. He's a gamer too, and he's always like, what are you gonna do? Like, oh yeah, let's use ISO 8, you know, because ISO 8 was already something that's been used in other Marvel games. It was basically the energy of the mobile games, like, you know, Avengers Alliance. Remember that game? It was like a 2D. It was on Facebook. It was a 2D turn-based kind of fighting thing. They already use ISO as their, you know, as a crystal thing. And Marvel was saying, oh, maybe you should ISO 8 too. And I was like, yeah, that's a cool idea. Let's talk to Al. Maybe we can use ISO everywhere in the contest comics and in the game. But then we start talking about, let's push this thing. Let's make this thing really important. You know what I mean? Like the rarest, the most powerful element in the Marvel universe. You know, we can do that in contests and it's not gonna mean much. But when he did it in the comics, suddenly it's part of the lore of, you know, the main lore, the 616. If you read the Ultimate, there's pages that I still reference to today where he explains what ISO 8 is in a very scientific way.
Interesting.
And that kind of became the thing, you know. So that's fantastic to me that we got this kind of entrance into the comics. And every time I met some creators, I tried to, like, you know, you get starstruck. There was a party in 2000. When did Stan Lee die? It was 17 or 18. It was one of those years. And they had like a big celebration for Stan Lee during Comic-Con, but only people at Marvel and involved in Marvel were invited. It was at the New Amsterdam Theater, really traditional theater in New York. And Marvel Games gave us a couple of passes. And I still have it on my wall because it was a big celebration. I think they showed it on ABC or something like that. Even I was there. And I was sitting like side by side with like not only the comic book editors, the creators, but also the people from the TV shows, you know, movie people, a few. I remember the guy who plays Kingpin was there. And they did people presenting on the stage were, you know, Daredevil and all those people. I think Robert Downey Jr. came and said something, and it was like everybody was crying. So that was an incredible moment. And then after that, we went to a party, same building, just went up, and there was like this, no, same building, it was like next door at the wax museum. So they had like all the heroes there in wax form, and I started seeing all these people, and I was like, oh my God, it's Todd McFarlane. Oh my God, it's this and that. So I had to talk to people. I had just, as a fan.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I was like, hey, like, we're making this new game called Realm of Champions that is inspired by Secret Wars, and do you want to draw something for it? Because I had that power to just, you know, hire those people to come to games too. And they're all interested in doing it, right? Games pays well too. And so I got to get a lot of contacts from people, and we used some of them in MROC. So yeah, the creators definitely. But, you know, the directing type, I think, is also pretty damn good.
Yeah. Can I ask you about Realm of Champions for a minute?
Yeah.
So Comic-Con 2019, that's when you first make the announcement that you guys are working on this new game. And it seemed like at the time, you didn't want to say too much about the, the gameplay just yet. But I still walked away with some first impressions and, some initial feelings about the game that ended up being quite a bit different from, the version of the game that was released. So I'm curious, were you able to, see your initial vision for the game through, or did something, change during the development process?
It did change. Yeah, it did change. I think one of the mistakes, part of it, I have to admit, part of it is my fault. It's just like, I created this thing that was 80% creative, world building, character development, connection between contest and another game. On paper, it was this unique thing, and Marvel immediately fell in love with it. And internally, there was a lot of interest. People start flocking to that project as this next big thing. I know how to sell things sometimes. Let's put it like that. It's not always a good thing, because sometimes you excite people about something, and a lot of things that you don't know how you're going to pull out, how you're going to execute, right? And I was very ambitious with that project. I wanted that project to be the project that I'll be remembered for. Reinventing the Marvel Universe in a way that it becomes almost like a new IP, but still being Marvel. That Kabam could, in a way, not own the rights to, but own. Nobody could make the Realm characters, only us, right? So it would be the best of both worlds. It would still be very Marvel to the core, but also very original, that we could sink our teeth as creatives into and write new stories and plan things, remix. And everybody got super excited about that point of view. But the more design-oriented and technical people look at that and say, how can we even pull this off? You know what I mean? Yeah. And because we already had set up, contract-wise, usually you set up a window, or the game needs to be released at that, between this and that, right? So the wheels start moving. We start to hire people really quick to execute on that without exactly knowing how we're going to pull all the moving parts of that game. The territory control, the house, the factions, the customization, the real-time multiplayer that we never had done before. So everything was new. There was a lot of new. And in games, if you're a responsible game maker, which I'm not, by the way, I'm you usually, there's all these things that we know how to make, plus this one new thing, right? That's a good amount of risk that most companies will take. Kabam, to their credit, they took a risk on something that had many unknowns. And when the development started, there was a lot of people trying to pull the project in different ways because of sometimes they were afraid that we would not be able to pull it off. So some people were trying to make it small. Some people were trying to cut things. Meanwhile, was like between two games, creating this grand vision of, how we can connect them. And maybe in a few years, I had ideas of I wanted two games to battle. You have millions of people that play contests, millions of people that would be playing MROC. And I was already planting the seeds in the story that contest, the whole thing with Galactus, that Galactus was brought into the battlerealm to destroy Battleworld so everybody could escape. That was the first step towards an incursion. So the people, and the Reed Richards realized that he made a mistake, that that there's billions of people living in Battleworld. Not only the fictional people, but also the players, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So the idea was that Galactus will slowly move towards destroying Battleworld. And meanwhile, the people playing MROC will look at contests and go, hey, what are those guys? Gonna destroy our planet? No, we're gonna defend it. But all those ideas are all good in my head. It's just like to execute it, you need a team of people and you need months to execute on something. So a lot of that will never work quite the way I imagine in my head. So people start trying to make the game feasible. And suddenly you see like a lot of the things that I thought was the core of the game being cut. The stuff that we sold on Comic-Con was, join one of the houses, become a recruit, conquer the other land. That was exactly what we wanted to do in the beginning. And we had prototypes of that, and it was so much fun. It was something new. And then the people that love the action fighting part of the idea will pull more into that. And that won. right? We cut all of the other part. I say we because I didn't have any choice on it, and I said we can't cut the map, we can cut this, but if we ship this game, it has to be like that. We have to have the basics, which is like customization and thing. And that for me killed what the game was supposed to be and what we sold to people. So it was part of it is my fault. I pushed people into this unknown that felt really good, but it was reality wise, it was hard to pull off in the 1 year that we had to, maybe 2 years. That would be like a 3-4 year development, and we didn't have that time. The team was already too big, too big to fail, like banks sometimes. You know what I mean? So the game needed to be released, even if it was not perfect, and because some of us will still remember that contest had pieces missing when it got released. So we said, yeah, we can do that with MROC too. We keep adding things, but the game did not have the essential parts to keep people playing and coming back. So we couldn't even have time to fix the problems, and the game got shut down. So my bad.
You kind of touch on legacy there for just a moment, and well, does this look familiar to you at all?
Oh man, how did you get that?
The reason why I ask is because there's a story in here that begins by asking two very short questions that are anything but simple. The first being, what is the purpose of your life? Followed by, what are you in this world for? And I'm curious if these are questions that you think about often, and is that what this, next chapter of your life is meant to be all about with the new studio and all?
Yeah, I think about that all the time. And I think I know the answer for myself. It's just like I live to do art and to tell stories and to make people feel things through that. It's very good to have that kind of opportunity and ability and experience in doing that. I know my art is going to survive me like every artist's art, you know what I mean? And nowadays, you don't need to be a big Hollywood star and reach billions of people to make a mark as an artist. You can find 1,000 people or 100 people out there spread to the world and really touch their lives. And I know I've done that even with contests. I think some of the stories, I see people coming to me and say, hey, like that story was amazing and really touched me. And that's kind of it's a stupid mobile game that with superheroes, you know what I mean? Like, and you can even do worthwhile things there. So I think that's the purpose of an artist's life in general. And I feel glad that I can do that and reach people. And that contest gave me that kind of platform to reach even more people. Now I just want to double down on the things that I care about, with the stories I want to tell, and not trying to find backdoor ways to put them in superhero stories, because sometimes it just doesn't fit. You know what I mean? Right. I love superheroes, and I love sci-fi and I love fantasy, and they can do pretty much everything, but I want to be able to paint beyond the borders a little bit more. That'll be the purpose of I'll be happy if I can do a couple of games in this company that will be remembered as something special. I still want to finish a few graphic novels. I still love comics, and I want to do that too. But games, you can reach so many people, and they can play, and they can beta test, and they create a community around it, which is something like comics or a movie or something like that don't quite get, because you watch it and it's done. And I think mobile is even more, it has more reach because everybody has a phone, and we've been saying that for years. It's the console in a pocket. So you create a new relationship with your games. It's not like you going to a console is beautiful and it's amazing, but you need to have a proper frame of mind. Okay, now I'm gonna go play Assassin's Creed. You know what I mean? And sit in my living room, turn off everything else. Nobody can interrupt. It's a different thing. It's like going to the theater, right? But mobile, you can create games that fill the gaps in your life really beautiful. My wife plays Pokemon Go for a few years, and it's being there for her. It's kind of weird to say that. It's being there for her when she was very sick and she couldn't do anything. She couldn't even watch TV. That felt really overwhelming for her. But you have something small that you can just capture the most. It just kept her sane, you know what I mean? So that's very unique to this thing, to the small screen.
Yeah.
Where you can just be somewhere and you just tune everything out for 5 minutes. So that's great. I'm not saying I want to be stuck on mobile, but I want to always be looking at mobile as something special that we can tell stories in.
Yeah, mobile games are pretty great actually, but I'm just happy to hear that you're gonna also continue to work on other things like graphic novels. That way, 10 years from now, I'll have something else that I can, hold up and ask questions about.
Where did you find that?
Well, so I was just looking into, some of your past works because I never have before, but I know you made a bunch of things, and this came up, Codex, the art and stories of Gabriel Frazera, and I was like, man, I wonder if I can find this. Is this being sold anywhere? I was looking around, I couldn't really find anything, and then one person happened to be selling a copy on eBay.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I just got lucky. It was $5.
That's
and,
rare because I think I made 100 of those.
You only made 100 of these?
I made probably a bit more, but I used to go to conventions and sell those. Those like collect a couple of my comics, and also all those that are like illustration and text is stuff that I used to post to conceptart.org about, and so I collected everything. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about your new studio, What If. The first thing I noticed when checking out the website is that it's very different from Kabam, almost the polar opposite. Like if you click on the philosophies page, actually I have it written down here, in capital letters, no paywalls, no overbearing systems designed to push spending over fun or endless hamster wheels that make the game feel like a chore. Short and sweet, your game should be self-contained and satisfying. And yeah, this is a pretty stark contrast from what players of MCOC would be used to. Why are these philosophies important to you?
Of course, we had many years working on mobile free-to-play, and we're seeing the good things and also the bad things about it. It's not a commentary on Kabam specifically, but because we work there and we seeing the state of the industry in general, there's some things that we naturally wanted to say no to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I see many people not having fun with their games anymore because of the way free-to-play pushes them to be always interacting very aggressively with the experience, and that kind of became a science for the free-to-play industry in general. Contest is actually pretty good compared to a lot of the other games. So because Kabam tries to give you an experience that you not feel too forced, but at the same time there's some people that will feel forced, and you'll feel like a job. They'll feel stressed instead of accomplished if they don't play for hours at end or pay some money. So it's a general kind of thing, right? If you think about how in the 70s the punk rock kind of said no to the excess of rock and roll, to the very long solos or the kind of overproduced things and the clothes, and try to go back to something that really mattered to them, which is playing with the attitude. It's not even playing well, it's the attitude of it. I think we can compare ourselves to that. We're trying to say no to some of the things which are great, in their own right, but that's not what we want to do. We want to go back to the Xerox or art or story. Everything will be less polished, a little more handmade, but they'll have a much stronger attitude and a relationship with the players that we will be proud of. That when you boot the game is because you absolutely love the game and you can't stop playing it, and it makes you feel happy. That's what we want, right? And of course, a lot of people look at us when we try to get finance for a company and look at us and say, really? You know what I mean? Like we're kind of crazy. And I can't understand how we can be shooting ourselves in the foot in terms of like, yeah, you made Contest of Champions. Why don't you go out and make another Contest of Champions for another big licensor, or, like make a Simpsons Contest of Champions or whatever, you know what I mean? Because the doors would be open for me and my team if we decide to do exactly that. Because they look at the numbers. Contest makes, I don't know, billions of dollars. And, oh, yeah, I'm going to make billions of dollars. This is the guy that was there since the beginning. But that's not what we want to do. And that's going to make our road a bit harder. It will. But our games, when you play it, hopefully, you're going to be there because you want to be, not because we just, oh, yeah, you need to go back to 10 tasks today. You know what I mean? Like, that's, my daughter plays Genshin Impact, and beautiful game. They tried to copy Zelda, and in many ways they made it better with the collection of characters and beautiful world. But they still fell into the gacha thing. And sometimes my daughter will be unhappy, crying because she wouldn't be able to finish the things before the 24-hour period, and she had to go to bed, and then she'll go like, oh, can you buy me a crystal? And then we'll buy a crystal, like, I don't know, $10. And then the character that it wouldn't be the character that she wants, and she'll still be unhappy. So I'm not blaming anyone for that. It's just like the very nature of free to play sometimes forces the company to churn so many people through the game to try and retain a certain percentage so they can pay for the structure that they have, which is like, hundreds of people, and make billions of dollars. We're not interested in making billions of dollars. If we make billions of dollars, it'll be a consequence of that. But nobody in the team wants to make the players unhappy. But all the triggers, all the stuff, that's the way it is rigged. Not rigged in a way that is, the result of the crystals or whatever. But the structure forces you, because you don't pay now, we have to make you pay somehow, and then we have to be very aggressive in trying to make you spend. And Kabam is not that bad in that, and they try it every time to make the game more open and more playable within the free-to-play scheme. But sometimes it's impossible. It's, you have to have millions of people playing, so to keep the lights on even, and to keep the game going for years, to pay for the license, the Marvel license, for the servers. We're trying to create something that is a little different model, inspired by other people that have done it. The philosophy thing is just to keep us honest. When people see it, and in a few years, if we change it too much, people will look at that and say, hey, you promised you're not going to do that. Why are you doing this, right? So, because it's very tempting when people come with millions of dollars at your door and say, I'll finance you, but can you put NFTs in your game or crypto or whatever it is, because it's the new shiny thing. Yeah. And you look at, and you're not paying your bills. Your team is working for free, and you go like, okay. So we're trying to keep ourselves honest.
Yeah, I imagine like most things in life, it's probably just about finding that right balance, which, is easier said than done. But even still, I imagine it must have been extremely difficult to walk away from everything that you've had such an important role in helping to create. The battle realm and all the unique characters within it with storylines that were still unfolding. This change in mindset or these philosophies that you're going into the new studio with, is that ultimately what led you to walk away from Kabam?
I think it was a little bit of a lot of things. One, I was there for the longest I've ever been in any company, and I was very comfortable. I had a great position. People listened to me. I was well paid, working with Marvel, probably the best, partners that we can ever have. I could stay there forever, and people were very friendly. But then a lot of people that I knew, and a lot of, the early structures start moving, people start leaving, and, because natural, people go to other places, and suddenly you have less friends, you have less people that know you, and then you start having to reintroduce yourself. When I go into the meeting, and as I say, no, this is wrong, you know what I mean? Like, people would look at you like, and who are you? Like, and then you have to say, I hate doing that. I hate titles and stuff like that. So just like, oh, I'm the creative director. So it's starting to get a bit more difficult. And then there was the whole thing with MROC that was really taxing on me psychologically, physically. So I started people getting, and I saw that in other companies before, when things get really hard, people changed and they start getting really stressed, and fights will break out. I'm not the kind of people that fight, so I never did, but I see people in meetings getting really antsy and sometimes yell, and it's like, man, we're working games, we're not like in a war room, right? And that's because of the stress. So I started feeling very responsible for like part of that, and that made me really, really bad, in a bad shape for a while. So, and also the fact that I started to get that itch and start getting, I want to do something a bit different. Luckily, at the time, the CEO of Kabam, Tim Fields, and super nice guy, and he gave me the opportunity to start a new project inside Kabam without leaving contests. Because contests, in a way, is a well-oiled machine. The team is really great, and they know exactly what to do. All I had to do is to show up in a few brainstorms at this point and not be 100% involved, like hands-on, like I used to be. But I miss that, I miss being hands-on.
Yeah.
But I could do like halftime, still go on contests, and start a new project. So I did. I started a really interesting, weird, something that I really wanted to do. And I asked to have a few people in my team and create a small indie team inside Kabam in a way. And he said yes. And I was like, oh, this is great because it's the best of both worlds. I was thinking about leaving, but if I can still get paid and start a new project with people that I love working with and maybe create something new for Kabam that is original, that's the best of both worlds, But then it didn't happen. There was a lot of changes, Team Fields left and every time the structure changes, the priorities would change too. And so suddenly my project didn't have a lot of space in there and people start getting pulled into different projects too. And so I said, you know what, like I gave it this one last shot. I love this place but I can't do it anymore. It's not even the right time. If I was smart, I would wait till February, for example, because that's when the bonus will get paid. So I was just like, no, I can't. I just have to do it. I just have to like rip off the Band-Aid. So I took a month off just to think things through, see like financially, how long could I hold off, not being, homeless. And so I did it. And then I knew there were people already that wanted to do it with me. I have friends all over the game industry, ex-Kabammers and stuff like that. So I said, I'm going to take the flak now and just and be the lead on this. So other people can do it. Other people that didn't have a chance, because a lot of great designers, a lot of great artists, a lot of great programmers, but a lot of them don't have, they don't know where to starting something new. They love making games, but I knew I had a lot of contacts in the industry, networking, so I could open some doors. I could be a good lead to start a company, and that was basically it. That's been almost 10 months. Yeah, it was October last year.
It wasn't that long ago that you had tweeted that it was pitch day. And fairly soon after that, there was another tweet that, it seemed like it was kind of a success. Who are you pitching to? Are you able to say?
No, I can't say it.
Can't say? Okay.
I can't say it. I have people that I know that work in big companies that, now they're on the other side, on the publishing side. And when I left, I contacted everybody and say, hey, I'm doing this new thing. Do you want to listen to some of our ideas? And they said, yeah, absolutely. So we went to Los Angeles and pitched to some people. We also talked to some potential investors. Everybody's really excited about the fact that, Marvel, we did Marvel. So we made a lot of money. So, but of course, when they start looking at what we want to do, is a bit, some people get a bit scared. They go like, oh, it's like, this is new. This is not like what you've done before. And we pitched I think we pitched 7 games. 3 of them got really great, reviews. And the idea is never the problem. I think we always can sell really great ideas and really great pictures, and the presentations full of great visuals and stuff. Then when it gets to the point of people need to pay for it, then they start looking at other things other than the idea. And sometimes it doesn't make sense. Sometimes it's like, oh, so you want to do a premium game, or you want to do in this platform. And it's not exactly what the market sometimes wants. And now it's a really weird moment in the game industry. There's been a lot of people laid off because it's been a transition. I think a lot of people invested in the real sketchy stuff, like, NFTs and crypto games, and a lot of people lost money by doing that. And if you're an investor and you don't know anything about games, and somebody will tell you, oh, invest in crypto games is the new thing, and you go there, put all your money, and you lose it, you're gonna think games equal bad, because you don't know the nuance of what games you should invest on. So a lot of people got scared. So we're having a lot of conversations, but it's gonna take months and months and months. So we decided, like, that's what we want to do anyway. That's a number 1 on our list, to make this new IP happen. We're a bit scared because that's the highest risk, but let's go for it. If we get to self-fund this with the community, then it's the best of all worlds for us. So we can create our own thing. We don't have to get anybody, ask somebody for approval, or, have investors like that really don't understand what we're doing, saying that, you know, I need my money back and, you know, all of that. We might still have to do that, of course, because that's how it's been done. But if we can get you guys to help us finance this, the people that are the most interested in actually playing the game, then we can bring you all with us in this journey. You know, have a Discord, we can have people involved in actually playing the game, and much more than a big company can do, because we're going to be all in the same kind of talking to us. It is the golden dream for sure. And I know a lot of people fail in their Kickstarters, and we've been looking at the page and say, how many followers do I have today? And like, biting like nails. And hopefully all we built and all the connections and all of you guys that know what we've done before will be enough for us to do this kind of like people revolution, instead of, you know, having to, you know, ask some billionaire to pay our bills.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That would be the dream.
That's probably better. Yeah. So
yeah.
Hopefully we can do it, at least to like keep us moving into the next step, you know, because we want to take KINSHFT and make it as a universe or something, you know what I mean? And make something really, really cool.
Something else that you tweeted earlier this year was, nothing beats the feeling of infinite creative possibility. So it seems like you guys could have went down any path when, you know, picking like the style of game you wanted to make. So what led to KINSHFT, which your Kickstarter describes as a time-bending action RPG? And when you say time-bending, are you talking about the story, or does time bending include the gameplay as well?
It's part of the game, yeah. We thought about a lot of different games. The one thing that was in common between all of them is that the creative and the design came together at the same time as one indivisible unit. We always say there's like two legs, right? If you have to take one step with the left, but then you have to take one step with the right. You can never take 10 steps with the left. You'll fall. So all of the games we thought about, and we pitched a few different games, had that component. The main character or the main characters or the story that they go, the arc they go through, always get manifested to like a really interesting mechanic that matches those characters. And when you make a game like Contest of Champions, let's say you put Hulk in the game, or somebody that's really good at fighting physically, the mechanic of contest will naturally lend itself to those kind of characters. But throughout the development contest, we found a lot of moments that some of the characters, they're great and they're popular, so we want to put them in the game. But when it comes to the fighting part, you go, that character really is not a fighting character. So when you put like Professor X in the game, it feels kind of silly that he's punching people around. So we have to go around those things and try to find imaginative ways to make a round thing fit in a square hole. You know, I'll give you an example. Quicksilver. You know, we love how we made Quicksilver in Contest of Champions, but that character wants to be free. That character wants to get away from that box. Yeah. And not just run back and forth. So if you think about making a Quicksilver game, it would be more of a racing game, right? I think the main gameplay philosophy that we have, whatever it is, it needs to fit like a glove. KINSHFT, as soon as I took that idea that I wrote a long time ago about this family that needs to help each other through time, it felt like a game since the beginning. It's a team game where the people are separated by thousands of years, but they still can do those very supernatural actions to help each other. Sometimes very subtle ways, sometimes it's just through information, and influence each other. It felt like something unique, so much that when I talk to people about it, they look, it kind of feels like a scene, a game like that, but they can never say what game it is. And that's always a great thing. It's not quite like anything that is out there. There's so many things out there that probably there's games that approach that idea, but not quite like we want to approach. So that feels like, okay, this is original. This is something we should pursue.
Well, KINSHFT is reminding me of one of my favorite games of all time, which is probably the first game I ever played with that played with the concept of, time, which is Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, where you did something in one timeline that affected the other. And you did have to solve puzzles that way. And yeah, what a great game.
Yeah, Zelda is always like people say, it's maybe this, Ocarina of Time or Link to the Past, or even the new one, right? There's some time components to it. So time, people play in different ways. The interesting part is that every time-based game is different and explore different aspects of it. Mm-hmm. Our game wants to stay away from time travel. Nobody time travels in this game. Time passes the way time passes. So if you want to help somebody in the future, you need to help the way people would do it. I'll leave something for you for 1,000 of years in the future to dig. Oh, I need a sword. I don't have a sword. Okay, where are you? I'm lost in this place. I'll just put a time capsule into the ground, and you dig a hole and you find it, and here's your sword.
Is that how they communicate with one another, or is there like some other device that they can use to like talk to one another?
They do feel each other's presence. That's the kinship, right? This part of the mystery of the game is what is this? Why they're feeling each other, even though the daughter is dead to the mother for thousands of years, the mother is dead to the father for thousands of years, but they feel each other like they're present. This is the idea that feels grounded to me. That's how families and friends relate to each other, even though you might be far away from your family, you still feel like they're with you. And when you meet them again, I meet my brother. It's like we met yesterday, even though it's been 3 years since we've seen each other. That spiritual connection, that whatever it is, it's something that people experience every day, that closeness to your kin. So we decided to make a bit more fantastic. I know people will understand and say, hey, this is like my life. So we have the human part and the metaphysical sci-fi or fantasy part kind of stacked on top of each other. At first, you don't know how to do it. You think you're alone, and you start feeling hints of your relatives with you. And at first, you think it's just like you're seeing things, but then you see that it's real, and they appear to you like almost like force ghosts or whatever, And they start talking to you, so you start being able to communicate across time, but you can never be physically in the same place. So you need to go around those limitations to either send information or teach them to do things. And eventually you start so good at doing things that you might be able to bend a little bit the rules of time and space. And that's what happens sometimes. You might be able to influence the past from the future through echoes of this kind of weird quantum entanglement that you can see through space-time. So yeah, you go through a journey where your powers, your abilities to manipulating this will get better. But then the question is, will you be able to ever meet again? And that's the question we're going to leave for people to play through the story and see if you can do it, if you can ever see each other again,
Okay, interesting. Well, I don't want to pry too much about the story of it all. Wait for the game to come out for that, but I am curious. Is this a single player experience, or is this multiplayer and like each person controls a different family member, or what's the?
We're trying first to make a really strong single player experience that you can play from beginning to end unimpeded. Part of our philosophy, like you've seen, is making things the right size, make a game of the right size where people can play from beginning to end, feel satisfied, like a good meal, and end it. Because ending a game is something that is being a bit lost for us. A lot of games, you never finish games anymore, except if you have all time in the world, or maybe that's your job to play games, you never finish every aspect of a game. You just abandon them. Or you keep playing them forever, like is the case of mobile games, because it never ends. So we want to create something that has an arc to it, and then it ends. And then you feel, okay, I conquered this, I saved the princess. And then we can move to season 2 or to another story in the same universe and have another cycle. And we do already have an idea for season 2 or KINSHFT 2 or whatever with another story that involves some of the same characters, but not all of them. So we spans a little bit that idea and the universe. So there is that idea of creating this universe that's connected, but you don't have to play every single game to understand what's going on. Every story is self-contained.
Well, we use our own lives for inspiration when creating things, right? And I'm it leaves me wondering if you ever wish you can kind of go back in time to maybe change something about the contest, or maybe just send a message to your past self. Is that something you've ever thought about?
Yeah, that's one thing I explored quite a lot in contest, actually. The whole idea of the battlerealm and how time works there, and trying to figure that out. I always think of us as one single unit through time, right? There's an interesting theory about that. If we could see ourselves in the fourth dimension, we would see all of time at the same time. You see the first day of your life and the last day of your life as a continuum, and not we only see this one slice, because that's how we evolved to see time. We only see one moment at a time. And that makes us think of even of the idea of having a past and a future and not being just one thing. So I use that a lot in contest. The Chrono Serpent, the big villain at the end of everything, is a villain that was created as somebody that is a fourth dimensional character. So he is a serpent because if you take your own life, Brian, and stretch it, from when you're a tiny baby to the last day of your life, and you make a shape, it would be a serpent, right? You'd be a long kind of thing through time. So the Chrono Serpent can control every single aspect of his life. The head of the serpent is at the very last moment of the universe, and then he stretches himself to the very beginning, and his goal in the end is to strangle the whole universe and make everything stop. He wants to be the only thing that exists, right? So that was the same idea of having time being something that we can only see one aspect of it. And if we could only see our past, we'd be able to control it and talk to people in the past and talk to people in the future because they, in fact, are here. Like Watchmen did that gracefully and masterfully, like with Dr. Manhattan, how he can see everything. He can see the past, the future as being one single thing. He could not control it because for him, it was already happening. So he could not stop things from happening because for him, it's happening right now. So how could he, right? So it's a very enticing idea that I always been in love with. And for KINSHFT, I don't want to go into high concepts of time and space. I want to see how those three characters can experience that and make the best of it. Oh, okay, me, my dad, and my mom are separate, but we still, the three of us, faced with a gigantic problem that we need to solve. Let's not make us being separate an excuse, and let's work this out, right? And help each other.
Yeah, I like that as a concept. There's a few different ways where I can kind of see this game going in different directions. It'll be interesting to see how you pull all this off and kind of combine everything, because I can see a lot of the puzzle aspects, but then it's also described as an action RPG. So are you also doing a lot of fighting, or is there like something that's kind of like an opposing force on this family's journey? Is there anything that's kind of like stopping the main characters?
Well, maybe acceptance. You know what I mean? If you're always trying to fight against time, you're gonna lose.
Oh.
You just have to accept it and do what you can do with the time you're given, right? And if the time you're given connects you to other people across time, maybe it becomes a tool. Maybe you can make things better. Maybe you can improve the world. Maybe So that the final idea of just accepting you're here for a limited time and you're gonna die, or maybe even saying I'm already dead. You know what I mean? For people in the future, I'm already dead. That doesn't stop me from living my best life and in the future leaving something beyond my own lifespan. It is part of acceptance. Sometimes you start getting old and you just like, oh my God, like how much time do I have? Or, and you start getting obsessed about the future. And then that's when you get anxious, or you're obsessing about the past and then you start getting depressed, and stop living in the present. What if you think everything's the present and you just do what you have to do and help each other and, help your family and connect? That connection is very important in the game. The more you connect to other people, not only evolve your own character, but evolve your character alongside the other characters, the more you're going to get strong together. It's almost like a tree, instead of a character tree that is just you improving yourself, there will be branches of that tree that to evolve between you and your mom and your dad. And then you start propping each other and becoming a unit, even though you're never going to see each other again, or maybe you will, but that's not the point. The point is now. Is the present. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just more curious of like so it's like, action RPG. Like, what is the action part of the gameplay looking like? Like, while you're, figuring these things out, do you have to be, fighting as well, or how does that work?
Yeah. In the moment to moment gameplay, let's leave the time part, separate. But we want to have that kind of flow, the sense of part of the time you need to solve things with your brain. Part of the time you can fight for it. We don't want a game that you spend 100% of the time just tapping or clicking buttons or just fighting mindlessly through hordes of characters. There's games for that and they're amazing. Play Diablo, it's great. We want a game where sometimes you're faced with a choice, and depending what you do, you either kill an enemy or you do something else. Maybe that enemy in the future will become an ally to your father. You know what I mean? Because being in the past as Nova means you have a legacy that you can leave for the future. depending on your actions. If you fight a lot, you might become Nova the Conqueror, you know what I mean? And then people are really scared of you, and then your parents will be like, oh, you're related to the Conqueror, and people be scared of you. Or you can be somebody that solves everybody's problems in a more, peaceful way or puzzle-like way. And then maybe they'll remember you. People that would be your enemies will remember you as somebody important to them, and then they'll help your mother. And lizard man or whatever it is that we find as enemies might become more enlightened in the future. Or you can kill all of them, and it's fine. It's all good. But we want to offer some of those options. Of course, we don't have 100 people team and billions of dollars to make an open world that every choice you make will cause cascades across the world. And so we have to be very careful how we craft the story and how linear it can be, so people still feel that there's moments that they can alter the course of time, but it won't make us crazy and spend 10 years making every single possibility. So that's why some of the decisions we're facing now are how meaningful some of the decisions can make, and we want the story to make sense in the end. And the players might feel that they have agency over the outcome. We have lots of characters. That's one thing that I've been drawing a lot in the concepts. We have tons of characters. We want people to be able to interact with them. The world needs to feel alive. We're still figuring out what exactly is the combat. What is the mechanic of the combat? We don't want it to be too complex, but also not too mindless. So we'll get there. It's the early days, but combat's part of it because we like action too. And we come from doing a superhero game. So we like those things. The Marvel part of us will never quite leave, Right. We love the action and the excitement, and that will be there. But also the parts where you have to think about it. And you go like, oh man, I don't have this item here, but maybe if I do this across time and do this, and things will work out. I want to see how people think in 4 dimensions and how they get out of trouble. This is like another example. We want the world to be really full of stuff for you to explore, right? And characters and side stuff and items to find, stuff to collect, enemies to fight. But then you see how you can slide into the future, and you see some of the stuff, the walls of the city, for example, still there but being broken, and now there's this cathedral shaped like a refinery or vice versa. In the future, you'll be able to go back and forth and see like, oh no, this is gone in the future, so I can't do this. So maybe I'll just see which buildings are still standing in the future, and I can utilize that to send stuff to the future. Or maybe there's some faction in the past that, I see there's some symbols here that they co-opt from our pop culture. This faction, they do something in the past, but in the future, they become something really nasty. So maybe you want to influence them in the past, give them something. So in the future, they don't become as nasty as they would and threaten your family. So there's a lot of things threads that you can pull that we want to put in this game, but you'll be free to choose, and find things to do, find things to collect. We love collection. We love all crafting. So we do have the idea, for example, of this quantum box that is a unique object. It's almost like a magical object that exists in 3 times. It has an entanglement from the past, the future to the present. So all the objects that you put in there, they somehow get combined into something. So that's our version of crafting, or maybe even the cooking in Zelda that we love, but across time. You know what I mean? So you need the 3 characters to find 3 pieces of this one thing that you want to build, put in this box, and so all 3 of them will have access to a version of it, entangled through time. So we do have concepts like that you have to use some of that quantum entanglement to create different things. And collection too. You have to collect things, complete things across time. Sometimes you can't complete a collection in the past, but maybe somebody in the future can, and then you work together in finishing some tasks like that.
Yeah, okay.
So there's a lot of little things like that you can do there. We think is interesting beyond the simple fighting or the traditional kind of questing.
That's interesting. It sounds like you're taking a concept that players are well familiar with already, with collecting and then using whatever you collect to craft with. But now with the curveball of saying like, okay, if you want to collect these things to craft, you'll have to traverse time and, discover and explore what's happening in each time period with each, family member. I really like that.
This soil is so fertile for this kind of thing that every day we come up with something new, and the limit now is like how much you can actually do with the amount of support we get. You know what I mean? If we if the Kickstarter goes, you got the bare minimum. Okay, good. We can make this game. But you're gonna see in the Kickstarter there's a map, and then there's pieces, and the whole first game is set up in the center of this map in the city and around the city. If we get some of the stretch goals we want, we're gonna add more to this world, and there'll be more adventures and more stories and different characters and different bosses. So even if we get the minimum, that's a complete game there for you. But then the game gets better and bigger and more interesting as we go through those, including new modes like collection modes. We do have an arena mode that we want to build so people can go there and pit their skills across, enemies of 3 different times. And then we want the arena to change too. If you switch to the future, the arena will have different kind of things that you have to go around and obstacles and stuff like that. So every concept that is very traditional to games, we want to throw that spin into it. But there are steps, right? Different modes, different parts of the world, improvements in the game. If we get through all our stretch goals, which hopefully we will.
Yeah, hopefully it works out. I'll, be sure to leave a link for people to check it out. Gabe, I do want to just change gears here for a moment, though, because towards the end of October, Kabam is going to be hosting their first ever meetup, or at least like on their home turf, outside of like a Comic-Con. And it's going to be a lot of people's first time in Vancouver. It's going to be a lot of people's first time meeting the game devs. So, I'm curious, do you have any advice for striking up a conversation with a game developer? And then maybe after that conversation, do you have any recommendations on where to get a good bite to eat in the city?
Oh man, Vancouver is like so amazing with restaurants. If you go to Chinatown, there's a really good barbecue place there. I forgot the name. But like everywhere you go, there's like great sushi, great Asian food, great Indian food. I think you can go wrong in Vancouver. I do think when you talk to devs, it's interesting because when people talk to me and they show knowledge of the game, it's always a good conversation starter. They know the game deeply, and you feel very happy that people spend so much time playing the game you did. So yeah, I think that would be a conversation because devs are also very shy. Yeah, if you say, hey, what about that specific fight or mode, or I love that story, I think people will open up. We spend so much time in the dark room of a studio, just working away and not knowing if it's gonna hit, if it's gonna be good or bad, and you kind of lose perspective a little bit. And Comic-Con was always great to really go there and say, okay, all this work is worthwhile because people are real people. Not names on the screen. Real people are actually enjoying it, and they want to talk to you, and you feel somewhat important in their lives because of that. And I always went back to the studio, and I had to really people in the studio said, try to convey it that there's people out there that really love what you do. So I was always in the airplane going back full of energy. Seeing you guys in person is as important to them as it is to you, because they need that. They need that to go back to their work and know why they are doing it. It's not only for the money, like I said. It's for that.
I think that's kind of the perfect thing to keep in mind is that we're typically stuck in this digital world, both sides, players and devs. And it's kind of good to sort of enter reality here for a minute and just connect on a human level. And believe it or not, Gabe, we actually have 2 very small things in common that are not related to MCOC at all. So the first is that back in the early 2000s, I just started getting into real-time strategy games like Age of Empires or Warcraft 3. And these games are brutally difficult if you don't have a ton of experience with them. And, I didn't, so I was really bad at them. And I wanted to use a name that would indicate, don't worry, this is going to be an easy time for you to defeat me. So I went by the name of Cakewalk. Does that name mean anything to you?
I know where you're going with that. I know where you're going with that. That comic, right? Cakewalk, yeah. That was a comic me and my friend Mike Meyer. Now he's like amazing artist and he's the director for cartoons now. He worked on My Little Pony, he worked on Snoopy, he did like a bunch of amazing stuff. We always been very good friends since animation school and we started doing those draw jams every Sunday where a lot of artists from animation and other places will come and just draw all day and we start doing those comics that people do, right? You do a panel, I'll do a panel. The story keeps moving along. Funny thing is like a lot of people start dropping, getting jobs and dropping from the draw jam. Me and Mike never gave up. We kept doing the same story for 14 years. Meeting coffee shops, you know, we also got busy, got families, but we kept meeting and it ended up being like I don't know, almost 60 pages of improvised crazy story. And we ended up publishing it and put it in conventions and stuff like that. It's a bit crazy. It's a bit out there. You know, there's a lot of weird stuff going on in the story. But by the end of it, because it was just me and him, we started like narrowing it down to a more cohesive story. Because when you have 10 people, the story goes everywhere and never makes sense. But when you have 2 people, you start playing against each other, right? You start trying to surprise each other. Well, what are you going to do? But we're both very committed to story, right? And so in the end, kind of everything, we pulled it all together in something that almost makes sense. If I remember, we broke the fourth wall and we started showing ourselves making the comic. It ends when we're very, very old, both like side by side in the hospital in the future. And then the boundaries of reality comes crashing and all the different characters come into our reality. And then we look at each other, it's like, oh yeah, I remember that comic that we used to make like 80 years ago. I don't remember how it ends. How does it end? And then in the end, the character would just hand us a piece of paper and say, hey, why don't you tell me? You know, and we thought it was a really cool way to wrap it up. A very, very silly comic, very rude in certain areas. And that it became something about almost like a commentary about our friendship and how we, working together all this time kind of made us like even closer friends and how we will remember that like forever because few things in life that you keep going and keep making it and eventually becomes part of you, and that story was like that. So
well, that's interesting because it sounds like it started with a good number of people and then it became something much smaller, just the 2 of you, and it's in some ways comparable to going from a larger game studio like with Kabam to a smaller one now with What If.
Yeah, in a way, yeah, that's what we're all looking for, do something meaningful in art and with the people they love, and that's all I want now is just make games with my friends. It sounds like a pipe dream sometimes, but I think we can do it. I think we're gonna be all right, and we can make a lot of people happy with our games and excited, and I think in the end that was worthwhile.
Well, Gabe, I said that we were connected in 2 ways, right? The second was a moment so small, so utterly insignificant that I'm sure to most people it wouldn't have registered as much of anything at all. But let me take you back to 2019 at Comic-Con. You just finished unveiling the world premiere of the trailer for Marvel Realm of Champions at the Marvel main stage. Which, by the way, to anyone listening, the Marvel main stage is something entirely separate from the Kabam booth. The Kabam booth is just for Kabam and whatever they made and brought to the, Comic-Con. And then, I don't know, about 50 or so yards away, that's where the Marvel main stage is. And this is where different Marvel events happen throughout the day, many of which are, kind of the first look, the unveiling of new games, movies, TV shows, whatever. Anyway, after you did your thing on stage, we're now all kind of standing around. There's a whole bunch of us just chit-chatting. Oh, what's this new game going to be about? This and that, And then we head back to the Kabam booth. And I don't think that we were necessarily intentionally walking together even. It's just that, 2 people head in the same direction through a very crowded convention center. And as we're, kind of slowly making our way through the sea of people, at one point you turn your head to me and you say, the song used in that trailer was Sol Invictus by Faith No More. And I'd never heard this song before. It's a fine enough song, but, has no real significance to me. It's just another song. Although, fun fact, Mike Patton of Faith No More happens to be a pretty big inspiration behind one of my favorite bands of all time, the Dillinger Escape Plan. But that doesn't matter either. What actually matters is that you also said that while working on this trailer, you played that song over and over and over again. And that kind of, stopped me in my tracks, because I realized, like, well, that's what I do. When I'm working on something that I'm like really pouring my heart and soul into, something that I'm just hoping that people will enjoy, very early on in the creative process, I find a song that sort of fits the tone, fits the vibe of, whatever I got going on in my head. And it's almost like a bit of a guiding force as I'm, trying to make whatever I'm making. And I do listen to, that song over and over again. And it made me realize that even though we're, two different people, and you have a lot more experience with this whole creative thing, and I'm much earlier on in my creative ways here, it makes me think that, hey, like, maybe I'm headed in the right direction. So that's kind of comforting to know. And it leaves me very curious. I have to know, been dying to ask you this. When working on KINSHFT, what are you listening to?
Oh yeah, so many things. Yeah, that's very important to me, like to listen to music. And sometimes I zero in one song because that song would tell me the mood of the piece, right? The Faith No More thing was like, oh, that's it. Like that growly kind of, because Mike Patton's amazing. He has like lots of different tones of voice, but there's one is a really slow, and I kept imagining that the visual of the watcher kind of moving slowly, like dragging his leg and showing like, oh, this is the future, like you don't know what happens. So every year I was like going to Kelly, which is the marketing guru there that we always work well together, and it's like, Kelly, can I have some budget for a song, because I keep listening to the song and it would be nice to have that song. And fortunately we did have some budget every year for some music. When I got to talk to, we had to get a call with the Faith No More's manager, and they're all very tight. They've been together for a long time, and he's just asking, they always ask like, well, why do you want to use the song and blah blah blah. He thought that we wanted to use the song from the new album called Superhero. He said, oh yeah, the Marvel, right? They want to use the song Superhero, right? And when I said that I wanted to use So Invictus, he was surprised. And then we got, a connection right there. And I started saying like what I think the song is about. And he's like, yeah, I think you're right. It's about the transition between the Roman Empire and the old gods and the new gods and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, that's the kind of thing that I wanted to put in. So they, in a way, they got sold in there that we were using in a good way. And I keep doing that. Like every year, there's one song for KINSHFT. It's kind of weird. But when I started the company, because I wanted to foster rebellion in me, I wanted to, say that I'm right, leaving the company and doing my own thing. So I started listening to the Sex Pistols, but I only listened to one song over and over. It's a song called EMI, because the Sex Pistols got signed by EMI and then got booted out from EMI for being the Sex Pistols. And then they got, they kept being like signed and unsigned. And the song is a diss song about like how they don't need anyone. They need their independence. And it's fine if people don't want to sign them, it's totally fine too, because they know what they're doing. And they answered to no one. So that song was my kind of, over and over. And then I started branching out to different things. I think I like to listen to songs that will inspire each one of the times too. Of course, the dystopian age would be very dark and drawn out and maybe heavy metal kind of thing. So a lot of Black Sabbath and stuff like that. But going to the future, going to the past, you have to find other things. And I kept finding new bands that I never heard before, or maybe that I'd overlooked before. For a while, I was listening to Roxy music, More Than This. That song, More Than This, There's Nothing. It was in rotation like for a month. I'll put it on YouTube and just go. And then my daughter come to me and we start discussing like, what is the meaning of this song? It sounds like a romantic song, like very like old-fashioned romantic song. But then in my head, it was like, for me, is this person talking about how there's nothing beyond death. I don't know if that's the meaning of the song, but once that one meaning is in my head, it connects to what I'm doing, and then that's it. I know you do the same. You're just like, oh yeah, okay, that's it. That's the song's gonna take me through this. The other day I'm cutting a video for the launch of the campaign of KINSHFT. There's some gameplay, etc. And then I was like, what song I'm gonna put? I'm probably gonna put something from Service, right? So like Epidemic Sound or whatever it is, because they have a lot of licensed songs that are not super expensive. You just sign every month you pay. But then I was listening to some 90s songs, and then Metallica came in, Nothing Else Matters. And then the first line, as you know, is so close no matter how far. And I was looking at the video and I was like, now I have to put Metallica in this, because this is exactly the thing that this video needs and this game needs, you know. It's so close no matter how far. That's the whole game right there. And I was like, do I have to call those guys and beg for this song?
I mean, Metallica, that might be pretty expensive.
I tried it before, though. I tried it like when I was in school. I made a short video, like the animation school. You have to do a project in the end. So I made a short called Prometheus. That it was really dark and it was sci-fi. It was about a robot that is looking for life. You know, he's sent from Earth to look for life around the universe. So he searches for thousands of years and can't find anything. And then he returns to Earth to warn people that Earth is the only place that there's life in the whole universe. So be careful, you know, like. And then when you get there, guess what? The Earth is completely, life is completely gone. So he arrives and it's very, very dramatic. And then he gets hit by lightning and then he dies. The robot dies. And then while his carcass is on fire, a couple of cave people, like the survivors, they go and grab the fire from his carcass. And fire is rediscovered through, you know, the Prometheus story, you know what I mean? And then I was like, you know what song? I was listening to the Rolling Stones at that time. A very old song called Time is on My Side. Time is on my side, as it is. And I couldn't find any other song that I wanted to put in this video other than that. So I sent a letter to the recording company, please, you know, I'm just a student and I'm doing this. And they said, and they basically replied, no, the Rolling Stones won't do anything for less than $10,000 at the time. And I said, cool. But I tried. So maybe I'll try Metallica this time.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll be nice.
You gotta at least try, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Gabe, with 2020 being the year that it was, I wasn't sure that we'd ever get a chance to sit down and have one of these conversations again. And I hope that it's not our last, but, you know, if it is, then I just want you to know that you've had a real impact on, you know, more lives than you might realize. Everyone from the casual gamers that just enjoy sort of, you know, mucking about with their favorite Marvel character to the, you know, budding creatives that maybe hadn't quite found their way in this world just yet, and just needed a Deadpool drawing partner for 15 minutes at a Comic-Con in New York. So from all of us, thank you, and good luck with your new adventure.
Thank you very much. And, you know, it's not going to be our last talk. You know, you're such a great interviewer. Can you hold it again, and I'll take a screenshot. So
yeah, sure.
I'll send it to my friends. You know your stuff, man.
I really appreciate you just talking to me, man. This was amazing.
Yeah, it's cool. I love the work you guys do.